Imagine falling, not from a building, not from a bridge. Imagine falling from 33,000 feet, 6 miles above the surface of the Earth. At this altitude, the temperature is minus 50 degrees Celsius. The air is so thin, you suffocate in seconds. If the cold and lack of oxygen don't kill you, the ground is rushing toward you at a terminal velocity of 120 miles per hour. To fall from 33,000 feet without a parachute is a guaranteed death sentence, a biological and physical certainty. But on January 26, 1972, a 22-year-old woman defied the laws of physics, medicine, and probability. She fell from the stratosphere, she hit the ground, and she opened her eyes. Meet Vesna Vulović, a 22-year-old from Yugoslavia. She was full of life, loved the Beatles, and had just started her dream job as a flight attendant for JAT, Yugoslav Airlines. She wasn't a survival expert. She wasn't a soldier. She was an ordinary young woman. And on January 26, 1972, she wasn't even supposed to be at work. A scheduling error by the airline mixed her up with another flight attendant named Vesna. But Vulovic didn't complain. She saw it as a chance to travel to Copenhagen, Denmark, a city she had always wanted to see. It was supposed to be a routine journey. JAT Flight 367, a McDonnell Douglas DC-9 aircraft carrying 28 passengers and crew. But hiding inside the baggage compartment was a deadly secret, a briefcase containing a time bomb. The stakes were absolute. At cruising altitude, a commercial airliner is a pressurized aluminium tube flying through an environment entirely hostile to human life. If that shell breaks, survival is impossible, or so the world thought. January 26, 1972, 3:15 p.m. Flight 367 is cleared for takeoff from Copenhagen, bound for Belgrade. Vesna Vulović welcomes the passengers on board. Later investigations would reveal that a man, believed to be part of a Croatian nationalist extremist group, boarded the plane during an earlier stop. He planted a briefcase in the luggage compartment and walked away. As the plane climbs into the winter sky, the cabin is peaceful. Passengers read newspapers. Vesna moves through the aisle, serving food and drinks. They reach cruising altitude, 33,330 feet. They cross into the airspace of Czechoslovakia. It is 4:01 p.m. The bomb's timer ticks down to 0. 4:01 p.m. The bomb detonates. The explosion rips through the baggage hold, severing the flight controls. In a fraction of a second, the pressurized cabin violently decompresses. The plane doesn't just crash, it disintegrates in mid-air. Passengers and crew are instantly sucked out into the freezing atmosphere. For 27 of the 28 people on board, the end is almost immediate, but not for Vesna. When the fuselage tears apart, Vesna is in the rear section of the plane. A food catering cart pins her against the wall of the tail cone. She is trapped inside a severed piece of the aircraft, and the tail section begins its long, terrifying plunge toward the Earth. Imagine the next 3 minutes. The tail of the aircraft is in a freefall. Vesna is trapped inside, but she is already unconscious. The sudden depressurization of the cabin caused hypoxia, a severe lack of oxygen to the brain. She passes out almost instantly. Ironically, this is the first miracle that saves her life. Because she is unconscious, her heart rate slows down. Her blood pressure drops. If she had been awake, the sheer terror and adrenaline would have caused her heart to burst upon impact. Furthermore, Vesna had a history of naturally low blood pressure. She had actually consumed massive amounts of coffee just days prior to pass her medical exam to become a flight attendant. Now, that medical flaw is acting as a shield. The severed tail section tumbles through the sky, but instead of falling like a rock, the aerodynamic shape of the tail cone catches the wind. It spirals, gliding just enough to slow its descent. Below her is a thick pine forest, blanketed in deep winter snow. She is falling at over 100 miles per hour. The ground is seconds away. Impact. The tail section crashes through the thick canopy of pine trees. The branches act as a giant natural shock absorber, snapping and bending, slowing the metal tube down before it finally slams into the deep snow at an angle. The force of the crash is catastrophic. Vesna's skull is fractured. Both of her legs are broken. 3 of her vertebrae are crushed, leaving her temporarily paralyzed below the waist. Her ribs and pelvis are shattered. She is bleeding out in the freezing snow. She should be dead. Deep in the forest, a local villager named Bruno Honk hears the crash. He rushes toward the twisted metal. He navigates the horrific scene. There are no survivors. But then, in the eerie silence of the woods, he hears something. A faint cry, a whimper, coming from the darkness of the ruined tail section. Bruno Honk was not just a villager. During World War II, he had served as a combat medic. He knew exactly what to do. He finds Vesna, crushed beneath the food cart and the body of a fellow crew member. He does not move her, knowing it could sever her spinal cord. He keeps her airways clear, wraps her to preserve her body heat, and stays with her in the freezing dark until the rescue teams arrive. Against all odds, the 22-year-old woman who fell from the stratosphere was breathing. Vesna Vulović spent days in a coma. She finally woke up in a Prague hospital. She had total amnesia. The last thing she remembered was greeting passengers in Copenhagen. She asked the doctors for a cigarette. Her recovery was a medical marvel. Despite a fractured skull and crushed spine, surgery allowed her to walk again. She even asked the airline if she could return to her job as a flight attendant. Because she had no memory of the crash, she had no fear of flying. Instead, the airline gave her a desk job. She became a national hero. In 1985, Paul McCartney handed her the Guinness World Record for the highest fall survived without a parachute. Vesna passed away in 2016 at the age of 66. To the end of her life, she remained incredibly humble, never viewing herself as a hero, just a survivor of circumstance.